I'm the vice chair of the committee. Patrick Delaney is not here today, and at this time, I'd like to have everybody here, at least up in the front here, introduce themselves. So, Justin, we may as well start with you, I guess.
Older person from District 3, Justin Pluis.
Alderman from District 4, Jeff Penscover.
Jay Catnaw, District 5.
And the next person that is filling in for Patrick Delaney. So,
Madeline Pomquist, District 8.
Matt Zacher, Mayor.
Ryan Hartman, Human Resources.
Tim DeSorsi, Finance Director.
Sue Show, City Attorney.
okay, and then Fire Chief, of course, is here. So, the first request here is from Alderperson Palmquist on a discussion with the fire department. And at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. So this follows our 7/16 Common Council meeting where Mayor Zacher presented possible options regarding the structure and short and long-term needs for our fire and emergency medical services staff. The intention of this referral was not to focus on if relief is needed, but how to provide that relief. But I think the best place for us to start is a presentation from Chief Eckes giving a full overview of the fire department, their structure, and their needs.
First off, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this consideration. This all started a few years back when we came to you the first time. We thought we were going to get 3 more out of SAFER. That never happened. During that time, run volume continues to climb. So, starting with the very first slide, predictable is preventable. I put that up there because what's happening right now is very predictable. You'll see throughout the presentation, 22% of the time when we're getting paged out, we're leaving 5 people left at the station most of the time. So if it's predictable, it's preventable. If anybody has ever ran through a safety program, if you can predict it, you can prevent it. So some of the members of the committee, myself, Ben Goodrow couldn't be here tonight. He is actually at the National Fire Academy in the second week of Executive Fire Officer. And then Lieutenant Derek Matkowski. This isn't just for this presentation. This has been going on, like I said, for the last 2 years. These guys are also integral in some of the things we've done that I'll discuss a little later on to try to prevent this, to try to work with the numbers we have and the increasing calls, so that besides them, all of the staff really, some of the battalion chiefs have come up with some great ideas to try to spread that out and try to, work with what we got. But we're getting to a point now with call volume that it just isn't possible. So, some council responsibilities. This comes right out of statute, so you can read the whole thing. But the part that really kind of stands out here is council shall have the power to act for the government and good order of the city for its commercial benefit and for health, safety, and welfare of the public. And that's what I'm here to discuss tonight, is the health and safety and welfare of the public, and with the situation that's going on right now. I'm sure you guys have seen this. I talk about this all the time. Our mission statement, we push this, we press this hard with our members, And I put this up here because, you know, when we're sitting at station with 5 and 3 and sometimes one person, it's hard to be professional and proficient at the tasks that we are asked to accomplish. I will say one thing, that no matter what the stress levels have been, no matter what the situation has been, the 39 members of Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department have always been polite to everyone they meet, compassionate to those in need. And to me, that's a professional point from the top that happens every day, even though at staffing levels, when we're at high volume, high call volume levels, is kind of tough to do. So here's our staffing, or our organizational structure right now. I'd love to say that we're full, but I'm not. I just received a resignation at a very top level this last week from my deputy chief at EMS, who's moving on to bigger and better things. So he's got an opportunity to do something that is only happens in a person's career once in their life. So I give him farewell and adieu. I think he's going to do great in that job, but it leaves us with another opening again. So, you know, we're more than an ambulance service. We are probably one of, I wouldn't even want to guess how many in the state of career departments or full-time departments. But I will tell you that we're probably the only one that I know of that doesn't have a single admin person. Everybody around us has 1 or 2 admin people who take care of a lot of things like doing some work in like our image trend, doing, you know, day-to-day work, putting schedules together. All of that stuff that goes on by a person in any other department is tasks with the management, and not even just the management, but like our lieutenant levels. Everybody in that structure there that you just saw at the top level has a job besides being a firefighter and a medic. Somebody takes care of our building and grounds. Somebody takes care of our SCBA. Somebody takes care of our PPE and our hose. Everybody's got a task that they got to do on top of all that. So our EMS responses, 911 responses, I'd love to say the community care would be a bigger component, but that's kind of driven by the hospital, and we don't get a lot of references. They're not really buying into it yet, but we continue to try to work with them and try to get that as a bigger component, try to maybe reduce some of that load. Tactical EMS, we stand as the tactical EMS team for both the city and the county. You know, that's pretty important. Those are our officers who we're there to protect when we're in there as a medic in their stack, and friends throughout the county that are protecting the people around here. So obviously, you know, we do fire suppression, structural, wildland, special operations, rope rescue. We don't have much of a choice, considering that the industry that's in the city. Confined space rescue, we do confined space rescue standby for a lot of the organizations. It's a benefit to them, because if we didn't do it, they'd have to hire a company to come in and do it. It's a benefit to them, and we give it an opportunity for them to save a little money in the company. We're talking about businesses in the city of Wisconsin Rapids that we're helping out by doing that. We're the hazardous materials team for the county, along with Marshfield. And it'd be easy to say, well, just let Marshfield do that. Marshfield couldn't handle it. That's the reason why we went, the 2 of us together. It's a big county. We take care of the south, they take care of the north. We also serve as the regional type 3 team for all or part of 19 counties regionally. So it'd be easy to say, well, let's get rid of that. Well, that brings in around $10,000 to the city, which is we spend on special ops equipment and hazardous materials equipment that the city would have to purchase if we were going to continue to give hazardous materials. So it's a benefit to be able to do that and have that extra income to be able to pay for that equipment. So fire prevention, that fire inspections, you know, that's a moving target. Every year it's different. Sometimes it's 800, sometimes it's 1,000, but as an average, probably around 900 fire inspections a year. Plan review, that's kind of eased up when we went with E-Plan, but we still do a lot of plan review when somebody's going to just put an addition or things like that on. Code enforcement, ensuring that the fire code is met not only through inspections, but new businesses come in, they want to take a house and make it into a business. You know, there's a fire code that they have to meet for that, and that's got to be, the code has to be enforced. So, juvenile fire setters program, pub ed, recruitment for firefighters and EMS to get into the industry, school-age programming, speaking engagements, civic organizations, civic engagements. Half the department is right now at National Night Out. Things we do like with the splash pads, it's letting the community get to meet the firefighters and the medics that, represent them and that serve them, so. So, anybody that was on the council 2 years ago or 3 years ago has seen this. This is, has got the new 2023 and the projection from there. That projection is done through data and statistical projecting. It's pretty accurate. 2 years ago, Ben Goodrow come to me and said, we're going to see a downturn in 2024 or 2023. And I said, you're crazy. The way things are going, he was probably within about 12 calls of what he projected was going to be the downturn. And then his statistical projection there for 2024, that's already from what we've gathered right now. We're probably going to be pretty close to 5,000 calls this year, 4,900 to 5,000, somewhere in there. But the projection's there, so with statistical data projecting, you project the worst that could happen and the least that could happen. And that 5,299 would be the least by 2027, and that 6,051 would be the most by 2027. The chances are it's going to land someplace in between there by 2027. Some of the factors that impact that call volume are aging population. So right now in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, 22.5% are over the age of 65. The national average is 17%. The median age for the city of Wisconsin Rapids in 2000 was 38, and in 2020 is 44. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you got to think about how many people you're gathering into that and what it takes to move that number up 6 years with the population that's in town here. So that is rather a large jump when you look nationally. Wisconsin Rapids is one of the largest per capita for nursing homes and ALRs in the city, in the state, one of the larger ones. Limited access to health care. There's a lot of high acuity patients that need to go north because of services that aren't available locally. Talking about people that are having heart attacks, STEMIs, stroke patients, level 1 trauma patients. We don't even stop here. They have to go north if they're going to get definitive care. We're starting to see more and more people that don't want to go to Aspirus locally because of their interaction there. We're getting a lot of requests just to go right to Marshfield or right to Wausau. Projecting what could increase that call, the new jail. Last year we ran 127 calls to the jail. That jail's going to be 3 times the size of what it was. You can do the math. It's going to be probably anywhere from 300 to 450 calls a year once that jail gets full. Their plan is to fill it because it makes money for the county. So, utilization of 911. People are using 911 for their primary health care. When was the last time you tried to make a doctor's appointment? You're 2 months out, 3 months out. People are impatient and they call 911. They want to go to the ER. We get people that call us and want us to take them to ER because they were there yesterday and they didn't do nothing about it. We take them back and they put them in chairs and they go and sign out AMA. It's that shift to immediate care is part of it. I'm not saying it's all of it. It's a combination of all of this that I'm talking about that is increasing those calls. So here's a call volume comparison with other departments around the area. You can see it's projected from 2018 to 2023. We broke it down in the call volume or the runs for that year in 2023 and what's their staffing for that service right there. I added admin staff into there. You can see that we have a 0, a lot of them have 2, most of them have 1. Calls per member, you can see we're one of the highest, 116 calls per member. If you look at the bottom, I put a projection on there of 5,000 calls, and I've got a 39 and a 48 there, that 9 members. The 104 then would be 9 members. The 128 is if we stayed status quo at 39. And then runs per capita. The first yellow line is runs per capita for the city only, and then the last one would be runs per capita for a total population. So firefighter availability using 2023. You can see I broke out every single month of call volume for the month, and how many instances that we had 2 pieces of apparatus or more out at a time. When we have 2 out, that leaves us at 5 people in the city. 3 out leaves us at best at 3, depending upon if that's a 2-person call or a 3-person call. So 21.5, almost 22% of the time, there were 2 or more calls at the same time, which means we're sitting at 5 or less in the city. If you look at the bottom line, 4,544, that was at 2023, where we had projected it was going to drop. 1,009 instances where we had 2 or more pieces of apparatus out. Doesn't always have to be an ambulance. It could be a fire truck is out at something, or another apparatus of some kind. Here's to date, January to June to date, our responses, off to the left, EMS, the false alarms, the fire calls, the service and good intent calls, and then our overlapping calls to date. So to date, out of 2,487, this was through June, it was through June, 552 instances where we left the station with 5 personnel or less. You can see the different numbers of when we've had 2 calls at the same time, 3, 4, whatever. So you can see that in the graph chart there, the line chart. So here's a hot map of where our calls are. And I broke out, if you look to the left, there's been a lot of talk amongst council and other people that, boy, that area that we took on to the south is what's causing this. When we came to you, we told you that it was going to be around 350 calls. That's what we projected. Last year, the town of Port, Nakusa, Cranmore, and the Ho-Chunk Nation, which is what we took on 2 years ago, was 373 calls. So I was off 23 calls, but that 23 calls is not what's driving that increase. The big driver is the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Is the other 3 areas, do they have an increase? Yeah, but it's proportional. It's proportional to the population. That hot map to the right is showing you where those red spots are, if you look at them, in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, ALRs and nursing homes. There's a lot of them in those 2 hot spot red spots right there is all our ALRs and nursing homes. "24-hour breakdown, and actually we're averaging about 13.8 now, so almost closer to 14 calls per day at 1.21 hours, so that's like an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 13 minutes. On average, that's all the calls throughout 2023. So are the calls in Wisconsin Rapids shorter time frame? Yeah, they are. Are the calls in Saratoga or in the town of Port, or the village of Port and Nakusa longer? Yeah, but it's not that much longer. You got to realize that what we do on scene doesn't change from whether it's in the city or there. It's the travel time. So if it takes us 5 minutes to get to the town of Port or the village of Port, it's going to be 5 minutes back plus the time we work on scene. If it's 10 minutes there, it's going to be 10 minutes back. So it's not like, we're doing 20 minutes in a city and it's an hour and 20 minutes out in those outlying areas. That's not how it is. It's the travel time is all the difference is. So if you look at that, just breaking out at 13 calls, that 1.21 hours per call, 15 3/4 hours, you figure 3 meals in there, that's 1.5 hours. And if they get sleep, if you think 6 hours, that leaves about an hour left. These are the things that we have to do every year. I'll answer a question if you got one.
I just wanted to stop you because we're going through a lot of information, but that one specifically had a question.
Which one? The
on-
next one?
No, the shifts, the 24-hour breakdown. So I just wanted to hear from you. I don't know if this discussion has happened previously or not, but I think it'd be good information. How is it settled that the current shifts in the fire department are the ones that were chosen to go with?
What do you mean by shift? 4896?
Yeah,
That was brought forward to the HR committee about 4 years ago, and the HR committee approved it. And it went to council, and that was approved.
okay.
It's a part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, yeah, just give me a little history on why
It was
asked
it was
for.
something that was researched by the union, and I'll be the first to tell you, and Derek's the union president will tell you, I was not an advocate of it, But we took it to a trial. We went 1 year, and at the end of 1 year, the chief at the time, who was Scott Young, could have nixed it. Otherwise, we went another year, and any time in that period, either the union or the department could get rid of it. And at the end of that 2-year trial, it was decided that we were going to keep it. And I'll tell you why I like it. I've never seen morale higher at the department than when we've had this 4896. It's probably one of the best recruiting tools I've ever seen out there. When I go to these tech schools and try to recruit for firefighters, there's 2 questions they ask me. You know, they ask about the department, but they start out with, do you have a residency clause? And do you have 4896? They'll stick around for a residency clause, but if you say no on 4896, they're not interested anymore. It's becoming a good shift. They get
Why is that? What's the preference from outside the industry?
You can ask the way this started, I'll tell you how it started was in California. Firefighters would live in down by in the good parts of the city, LA in the higher regions or the higher class parts of the city. They couldn't afford to live there, so they'd be living far out. They'd have like an hour trip in to get to their destination. This gets them in once, they're 48 hours in, out once, instead of in once, 24, out, in once again, 24, out. But Derek can talk more about why it's so popular here.
Well, to kind of build off what Chief Eckes said, when we first went to this, and Justin can attest to it, and Ryan, I was one that was totally, I was not for it. But once we went to it, 'cause we used to work 1 day on, 2 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off. You just didn't have the recovery time. When you get home, the first day it's down, and you just had less family time. It's been a huge impact just on, everyone in their home life, because you get 4 days to recoup. We make a lot of trades with the other schedule, so you'd fall and, you're working 48s anyway, so I think a lot of people just saw it that way and as a benefit. I would never go back to the other schedule. It's just, and I see it across the state. There's so many departments wanting to go to it for the reason Todd said, for recruitment and retention. And I know Wausau Fire is looking at going to it. Stevens Point is. It's just, it's probably bad if they go to it, because then we'll be harder to get employees. But no, it's recruitment and retention is huge with it. And like Todd said, the morale at the department, the camaraderie, just it went up. So,
Thank you.
That was later on in my discussion, I had that to be addressed. So were there any retirements or resignations due to changing to the 4896?
Nope, nobody resigned or retired. They came forward and said, I'm doing it because I don't like the schedule. Quite honestly, some of the I don't want to call them older, more seasoned veterans said, I'll give it a try. Everybody was willing to try it. And to date, I don't really know of anybody that really hates the schedule, so.
Okay. And then this is a benefit for recruitment, retention.
Absolutely. I can tell you that besides the residency clause, we just hired somebody within our last hiring that the residency clause and the 4896 were a big factor, so.
Thank you.
So just our daily breakdown, the hours to the left there, you can see those are set by SPS, which is the Safety and Professional Services. Those are hours that we have to maintain every single year in the fire side. That licensure of 84 hours is for paramedic. Critical care has got some hours on top of that. Those are hours that are mandatory. Then you get into all our special ops, confined space, hazardous material. Those are things that if we don't continue to train on them, you lose that muscle memory. There's things that you need to keep working on if you're going to stay proficient and at a high level of skill for it. So we want our firefighters physically fit, so we try to work in some time for them to do some physical fitness. That 900 inspections, station maintenance. You guys just spent some money, and the city did in a addition and a remodel of station. Last thing we want is to not take care of that. So we got to have time to take care of that station. Vehicle maintenance isn't we're doing the maintenance on the vehicle. It's the things like checking oil levels, checking air pressures, taking care of the SCBAs and things that are inside the truck every day, small engine equipment, that kind of stuff. Fire prevention we talked about, pub ed we talked about. I already talked about the confined space rescue standby. If we kept hours, you'd be surprised. It's in the thousands of hours we're probably doing confined space rescue standby. When we're down to 5 people, those phone calls have to be made to those industries and say, pull them out, we don't have a confined space rescue team for you anymore. So, you know, we're affecting their operations also. Our QA, CQI improvement program, requirement of CAS, I wouldn't want to stop that. That's what's made us the organization we are and brought us up to the high level that we are. So, image trend, IT administrators, this is a function that sometimes an admin will take. We're kind of unusual because we do some research with the hospitals. We do research ourselves in-house. We have a gentleman who I think is here, Joel Federer, can actually go on the backside and turn things on and turn things off if we want to do queries on things, try to figure out data. He's our go-to guy. Not every organization has that. So, and then the administrative duties, again, things that an admin probably would do that we write our own letters, we do all our own paperwork, the schedules that are made. There's a lot of things that are on top of there that, you know, are part of that daily operations also. So, some national standards and statutes. NFPA recommends 1.81 firefighters in the station per 1,000 residents. We're at 0.794. That utilization, 0.3 unit hour utilization. This is how much time units are being used. We're at 0.37. 0.3 is kind of the line in the sand. But the one is commitment hours. This is probably the one that a lot of them have gone to. How much time are your apparatus committed throughout that shift? And 0.3 is kind of a line in the sand, and we're sitting at 0.73. The 2 firefighters in and out are an SPS rule. That's so if you got 2 firefighters in a fire, you got basically a rescue team sitting outside ready to go. I know you guys don't like this, but I'm going to go through it anyhow because this is reality. So 2721 10th Street, 16-unit multifamily dwelling. Ambulance was on Plover Road, 3 medics. That's 1754, 1818. They went out to 19th Street with 2 medics, and I was actually walking to the phone to try to call people in, and the tones dropped for 2621. This is a multifamily dwelling with physically and mentally handicapped people in it, and we had a fully engulfed apartment fire. When I got there by myself with an engine, because the other engine was on the other side, coming from the other side, I had residents coming out with smoke rolling out the front door. If that doesn't make the hair on the back of your neck and talk about what our problem is here right now, I don't know what does. 9 minutes the time of suppression. That is unheard of. If we'd had a staffing properly, we'd have been in and had that thing knocked down in 2 to 3 minutes. So Franklin Street, Med 1 was at the airport for a flight crew as requested. 2 minutes prior to dispatch, they never did make the fire. We were paged to 3211 Franklin Street for a bedroom on fire. Child in the bedroom that was on fire, mother runs in, grabs the child, and leaves. Because we're down already, the battalion chief is trying to make calls. We can't rely on dispatch. Back then, they've probably been a little better. We've gotten to the point where we're trying to do callbacks. We got it set up on our image trend on the battalion chief's phone to try to just hit one thing and hit it, and it calls everybody back. He's trying to get that off duty. He's unable to accomplish it because they got on scene so quick. Because they're down, he ends up having to help pull hose instead of doing a size up of the operations. They only got so many few people. They got to go up the stairs, down a hallway to the 2nd-story apartment. He's on the wrong channel because he's trying to communicate with his firefighters instead of being out, being the incident command, and tries to move up to a MABUS card. Of course, they don't see it because he's on the wrong channel. We've got 2 people that have smoke inhalation request mutual aid. Our mutual aid told us that they were 20 to 30 minutes. I'm sure they were on a call or something. Our automatic aid, who at the time we only had 1 automatic aid, we now have 4. never answered up. It's the middle of the day. You know, our automatic aid partners are volunteer departments, and that is no kick on them. They got jobs, so there's times we're not going to get them. Never answered up. We asked for a second page, and they never answered up. Time to suppression, again, delayed due to short staff. We were lucky this was during the day because Jason and myself got on our way over there. Jason took care of the 2 patients until we got a call-in person in there to be able to help take those patients to the hospital. This one was this year, 710 23rd Street North. Again, Med 1's at the ER with EMS. Med 3's paged to the jail for inmates needing EMS. Paged to 4-plex, smoke and fire blowing out the roof. Somebody's still in the building on the 2nd floor. You can see we arrived with 3 personnel trying to get members called back. We were lucky that the guy come walking out as we pulled up. He was up in there. I don't know if he was sleeping and didn't know it. Everything's delayed. We're working with 3 to 5 people again. So, you know, I can go through a lot of them. I got some here on the 14th of April, 13 calls in 5 hours. For 3 hours, we sat.
Excuse me, Chief, can I interrupt you for just a second? Did you have a comment?
Thanks, Chief. I just want to ask you a question for clarification, I think, for the entire group, because as we've been talking, I've learned a lot. But just to clarify, and maybe others already know it, and for that I apologize, but the MABUS card, I believe that's Mutual Aid Box Alarm System.
Yep.
But, and I think there's a lot of confusion with mutual aid calls, like how those work, or how a mutual aid call actually runs in your tally of
Okay.
actual call. Can you kind of give
Sure.
us a...
So when we go out, we get paged to fire right now. We get paged automatically unless it's a fire alarm. But if it's a suspected fire, us, Grand Rapids, Port Edwards, Nakusa, and Burin all get paged at the same time now. That happened within this last year. It's the friendships, but the working relationships that we fostered over the last 2 years between our volunteer departments around us, our mutual aid departments. Something we've never really had great working relationships with before. And it's one of the things that I wanted to do when I got into the office was to try to work more like a team, all of us. So that's our automatic aid. And then United is also on that automatic as our ambulance service. We have worked out a deal with them. They stay in station unless we need them. And then Saratoga First Responders also are paged with that. They come in and do our rehab. So as our firefighters come out, they rehab our firefighters. If we move to a box alarm, which is the next step up, we start pulling in resources from someplace else. Right now, that is Rudolph, Vesper, could be Pittsfield, depending upon the box. So we've got a box card, a MABUS card made for residential structure fires, commercial structure fires, wildland, EMS calls, so like mass casualty incidents, water rescue. So we've got hazmat. We've got a card built for every incident. When our battalion chiefs go on scene, they tell dispatch, we're going to be working off of MABUS card 1R, which is our residential card, so that dispatch knows who they should be paging out other than our mutual aid. So we can move up. That is set up for, I think it's 5 boxes now. We go down as far as Camp Douglas and, I mean, for large incidents. Stevens Point, Marshfield. I think Wausau is even on some of our MABUS cards. So every time you move to a box, you bring in more resources. Those box alarms also then pull resources into their stations so that you don't leave anybody empty. So that's how a mutual aid box alarm system works. When I say our mutual aid partners, those are contracts that we have with fire departments around our area to have free mutual aid with them. So we don't get charged nothing. We don't charge them nothing. We send a fire truck out in the city or in the town of Grand Rapids, we charge them nothing for that. So does that explain it? Okay. So like I said, I can go through these all night. On the 14th of April, 13 calls in 3 hours, or in 5 hours. We sat at the station with 3 members for 3 hours. A Franklin Street fire had to be covered with incoming shift because we had people out already at mutual aid call. They came in, responded to a kitchen fire while we're already out at a fire. On the The 711 17th Street, we were short 2 personnel going to a fire there. The big one, though, is the one that happened a couple weeks ago at 630 Pepper. A nursing home with 19 residents, our most vulnerable population that can't protect themselves, and we showed up there with 5 people because we had 2 ambulances out. Our battalion chief at the time had to make a decision. Do we help them try to get these people out or go put the fire out? How are we going to serve? How are we going to save more people? He chose to put the fire out, which was the right decision. But I don't know if any of you would want to be put in that decision, have to make that kind of request brought to you, and then have to make a decision. Do I go after that fire, or do I try to save the people that are inside of there because we're down with personnel? That's not fair to our residents, and it's not fair to our firefighters. The stress it puts on those battalion chiefs, the stress it puts on that firefighter, knowing that he's going in a building with one other person, and we're not sure if we got 2 more people on the outside in case they get in a problem. It's not fair to them. It's not safe for them. So our request or solution was 9 firefighters. At the time, I asked for it through a referendum. You know, how that gets done is obviously negotiable. I mean, but I threw up some recent referendums that cities have had the same exact problems we have. And there they are, some upcoming ones. With that, if you got a question.
I have a question. You've said multiple times 5 personnel or less. Can you clarify why 5 is our key number?
Well, so the 5 or less on what I'm showing you here is because there's probably 2 people on each ambulance, and we get 2 ambulances out. We start with, our minimum staffing is 9. So if we're sitting at 9, then 4 people off because of 2 ambulances, we're at 5. That's how we get that 5. If one of those ambulance calls has got a high acuity patient and we send 3, then we're talking about 4. And to try to prevent that, we've done, there's a lot of things that I don't think any of you know that we've done behind the scenes to try to prevent this point in time when we're asking for more people. When we send 3 people out on high acuity calls, we send them on a chase vehicle. If that patient is stable enough, by the time they get done packaging that patient, getting ready for transport, that one person in that chase vehicle comes back, so we got somebody back in service quicker. We've actually, to try to take the workload off of just one ambulance, we've actually put beats together, idea of some of the battalion chiefs. Each ambulance has got a beat. It kind of saved or kind of spread the workload out. It also gets people back in service quicker in certain areas. So, I mean, we've just done so much to try to prevent this. Our callback is 5, so if we get to a point where we're all out for a fire, and let's say they get there and they put the room and contents out, we'll try to call 5 back just to try to save money for the city. Because we know that in a pinch, as an absolute have to, we can actually go and try to begin an attack or begin a rescue with 5. So that's again a tough position to be put in. So there's that Pepper Street fire. While we were there, we got paged to another fire. We also got paged to 2 or 3 other ambulance calls. Our mutual aid took one, referred one back to us. So it's, you know, everybody's busy. And when it comes to the fire, the mutual aid is great. I said they're volunteers, so they're coming from home to the station and then get in the truck and come into town. You can make the biggest difference in a fire in those first 5 to 10 minutes. The fire grows, doubles in size every minute. So if we're waiting because we don't have enough personnel, that fire continues to grow. But those people on scene right away, we make the biggest impact on a fire. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question as far as the NFPA's recommendation for the number of firefighters per 1,000 residents. I see the NFPA recommendation is 1.81, and the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department is currently sitting at 0.794. With an additional 9 firefighters, do you know what that number then equates to?
I I did not run that, but I'm going to say we're probably going to just, because NFPA 1710 says you should have 16 firefighters. If we got those 9 at full staff, we'd be 15. I'm going to say it's probably going to be, like at 1.7 something. I did not run those numbers.
Yeah, I have a question related to that as well. So in 2022, we were at 8.1 for every 1,000 residents, and since then we added 3 additional. I was confused on how .794 was calculated and how we went down after adding more staff.
Because call volume went up.
Okay, thank you.
And if you, let me get back to that one. So just the timeline of staffing, where you see in 2015 to 2016, I wasn't part of management then, but what I've been told is that was a decision to add the staff then because of the cost of overtime at the time. You can see in 2021, we added staff. That was the one. So when we added the 3 in 2015 or 16, one of those was one of the divisions because the work was getting so intense at the top. We added a division and 2 firefighters. The agreement at the time was our billing clerk, who was looking to retire, would retire, and we would hire another firefighter. In between the time that was decided and when she retired, we went to a billing service, and that billing service was going to cost an amount, and that billing agent's money was put towards that billing service. Is that correct, Tim? I think that's how that went. So you see the increase of the 1 in 2021 to 22. That was when we came to you and with the idea of taking those 3 areas to the south on. And if we did, we said we needed that 11th person. And that was approved by council and HR and stuff at the time. The 22 to 23 was 2 years ago when we came and asked for that 6, 3 with a SAFER grant, 3 through the budget. That's the 3 through the budget. So that you know how that increase is there and how that come to that point. That's what that increase is on that line.
I don't have any additional questions. Really, I don't have any related to if we need to continue the discussion regarding if we need help. I think we obviously need help, and we just need to move on to how we do that.
Thank you. So a few weeks ago, this was presented to us at Common Council. At that time, I think the information was new to a lot of people and the public. There was several different options talked about there, and I feel like we're at the start of the process of kind of going through those and figuring out which direction we need to go to solve this solution. And I thought this was very informational to help us take that first step. The request or referral to the committee was for an RCA to do it here. And on one of these slides, we're projecting calls out to 2027. With such a big decision looming and how we're going to approach it, I think we obviously have more meetings and discuss this more internally, but I think at some point too, we would need to consider a third party to come in and look at this from a neutral perspective or a different perspective, because internally here, I mean, we only know what we know in the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department. And if there's solutions that may lie outside of our knowledge, I think we need to know what those are. We did something similar with the police department when we were looking at the structure over there and we were having other issues. And I think that needs to be in consideration here to really take a look at if adding more people, in what capacity, and what function. It was mentioned that there's no administrator, and departments typically have administrators, so, the whole scope of what is really needed, if it's outside of what we believe we can work through, I think at some point we need to take a look at what we did with the police department, which is go to an outside firm who can come in and take a look at this neutrally. And then we're projecting, there's data on here, we're looking out to 2027, and it looks like Ben's estimates have been pretty accurate. In regards to looking out to 2027, Chief, what are your long-term plans with the department?
That was one of the reasons for the 9, is it'll make us sustainable for a ways out. It's going to, at the beginning here, help ease the pain that's going on right now, but eventually, probably, 8 to 9 years from now, 6 to 8 years from now, we're going to be at a load again. I mean, hopefully by then, we're going to get, you can say what you want, all right, I'll say it. I'm the end of it. The boomers are the ones that are calling, right? As you get older, you use the healthcare system more. You use EMS more. Our largest population ever in history is in that category using it right now. I'm the end of the boomers. I'm the very last year, 1961. I'm retiring in a year or two, so that population is one of the reasons why our ALRs and nursing homes are full and why we get used a lot. That's a known fact. So that projection will drop off sometime as the boomers start to leave this world, so to speak. Right behind that, though, if you do your research, in the middle school, about ready to go into the high school is the next. In fact, that population is larger than the boomers. That's gonna be the next wave. That's 30, 40 years from now. But hopefully, we're going to see that decline after that to that point. So, I think that 9 is a projection that's going to make us sustainable for quite a few years going out.
And so your plan, obviously you said you're looking a year or two, you may retire.
Yeah, somewhere along there, yeah.
Is there a succession plan in place, or obviously that's up to?
We have a succession plan in place for every position in our fire department. When you become a motor pump operator, there are step-up drivers that are learning. We've got task books for them. It's the same thing when you become a lieutenant. A second lieutenant learns the first lieutenant's job. The first lieutenant learns the battalion chief's job. Battalion chiefs learn the division chief's job if they wish to move up. Somebody is getting tutored by me for the last 2 years to be able to take that position.
Who is that person?
Well, there's a couple of them, but one of them is leaving. So,
as we talk about, projecting out to 2027, and you may not be here, or it sounds like you won't be here. Is that person a part of these discussions, or will
Absolutely.
that person continue as we go forward? Will they speak to that too?
absolutely.
And has that been,
He was part of our committee,
is part of the committee, and
and it's not Derek.
for the PFC, obviously that's a process they have to go through to hire, but traditionally they have went internally, and so you guys feel confident that it will be that person?
I don't know with Mayor Zacher what his feelings are. After I became chief, I sat down with Bruce King and Shane and said, this is kind of ridiculous. We spend $20,000 to $30,000 to do nationwide research or searches, and our last 4 chiefs have come in-house. We have I believe, a great succession plan, and there's always somebody that's ready to make that move into that chair when somebody else leaves. At that time, they both agreed we were going to open it up in-house first, and if we didn't get a candidate or a good candidate, they would go outside. I don't know what Mayor Zacher's intentions are, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Chief, I want to thank you for your presentation, and before we go on to our next item, is there anybody in the audience that has a few comments to make? And
Before we turn it over, I just had a comment I'd like to.
okay, go ahead.
So I agree with Alder Catmull that this is a big decision, and that, you know, a third party should be given their opinion, and maybe studies that they have done should be given some weight in this, in the determining what adequate staffing looks like for the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department. And I think the National Fire Protection Agency, that is made up of industry experts and insurance representatives, have done extensive studies in that, and they've come up with that. And that's how they came up with that number of 1.81 per 1,000 residents. And we clearly are below that number. That's not a number they just made up. It was a number, I'm sure, that was driven by a lot of data. And I think what we see in this presentation today, too, is a lot of data, a lot of similar data that if we were to hire, I've looked at plenty of staffing studies that would incorporate the same amount of data that we were presented to the by the chief of the department. And I know they put a lot of work into this presentation and collecting that data. And I think to say, well, we'll do a study, I think is just kind of delaying the inevitable. And the easy decision to make is, do we want to see the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department at an adequate staffing level? I think that's an easy decision, really. I think we all want to see the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department adequately staffed. The harder question is, how do we pay for it? And that decision, I think, because that's the big decision, I believe, and that's the harder one to determine, I think that one is why they're recommending a referendum, because that ultimately will rely on the citizens to make that determination how they would pay for that. And that would ultimately mean, a referendum. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The reason I mention that is obviously we all want the fire department at adequate staffing. The data, when we talk about the per 1,000 residents or we need this many firefighters, I don't know if it's unique. I'm not sure how often each city operates this way, but I know certainly in large cities they have fire departments and then they have EMS departments. And what I know about our department is that every single member is qualified in both. So when we talk about some of these numbers and we talk about being on EMS calls and then a fire happens, part of what's happening is that our numbers reflect both paramedic and firefighter. So those people go out, but they also are to fight fires. And with our local technical college at this time, I think they had 24 graduates, and this is no fault to anyone. I mean, people go to school for what they want to do, right? But they had 24 graduates, and we didn't hire any of them, even though we have open positions, because they didn't meet the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department qualifications.
That is not true.
That's what
We just hired three that just graduated this spring from Midstate.
Okay, I had asked them because they made a post on Facebook congratulating their graduates and the departments they went to, and I said, were any hired to Wisconsin Rapids? And they said, not at this time. But I don't,
We just hired Josh Mansell, who just finished the paramedic program, Garrett Huber, who just finished the paramedic program, Kyle Kazuski, 4 of them, who just finished the paramedic program, and Jacob Searing, who just finished the paramedic program this spring at Midstate.
so we are getting some qualified candidates out of there. That's good to hear. I think to the data still, the numbers that are mentioned, we're often talking how many firefighters per 1,000, we're talking about EMS calls, we're talking about a lot because our staffing is so qualified that they're able to do both. And I think that helps in a lot of situations, and it is a great thing that we have, and in other situations it can be tough because we can have a fire going on over here, and when everyone's qualified to do everything, they might be on EMS calls though when we have fires. So I'll be honest, I don't know what the solution is to this, and that's why I appreciate the presentation today, and we're going through this learning process. But I don't know if I'd be comfortable with just always keeping it the same way without seeing, what it might look like if we go somewhere else. And who knows if it's 9 that we need, going to a third party outside of ones that just provide data, and I haven't even looked at the background, where some of this data is coming from. We don't know if that's the best way to go about it. Third party could come in and tell us that we could be better off doing it a whole different way, and in a consulting firm like we use for the police department, and we got a whole report on it, and we were able to look, and they identified certain things like administrative lieutenant that we never would have thought of, and we ended up granting that to the police department. And there's all these different factors besides, doing it the same way we always done. And we say 9, but we talked about that number, and that number seems to just get us to what is being said as sufficient levels. Maybe it's more than that. We just don't know.
Well,
And
you
that's
realize
why
that
I
we
lean
have
that
12
way.
on a shift, but by the time you let people off for vacation, that's what gets you to your 9.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and we talk about vacation and the adding 9, and 9's the minimum to be on. I mean, how much do we really need? We might need more. We might need to do something different. And I mean, we can work through this process, but I think if we can't figure that out, that's time when we need to look at from someone from the outside to come in and say, hey, this is what your department needs to function. And what that is,
just promise me
we
that
won't know.
you'll abide by what that independent comes back with an answer. Because I've seen this happen across the state and across the nation, and they come back with more numbers than what you like, and then they beat around the bush on why they can't put that on. Most of those agencies follow the NFPA standard. And that NFPA standard is 16 firefighters on a 2-story residential, 2,000 square foot home with no basement. And how they got to that point was they burned something like 200 houses at the NIST center and tackled it with fewer people per attack line, 2 people in, 3 people in, 4 people in on an attack line. And they came to that number after burning 200 houses like that it took 16 people to put out a residential fire, and it takes 17 if you got a ladder on scene. And a lot of those independent agencies use that as their parameter. So I just promise me that when they come back, and if they tell you more than what I'm asking for, you're going to give it to us.
I can't promise you that because I'm floating an idea out in a committee that I'm not even on is something we should potentially look at, as I think we should look at all of this. So I don't know why you'd ask me to promise something that hasn't even been on an agenda yet. But I just think that this is the start of a further discussion where hopefully we can do some discovery and get down to, what direction we need to head.
Maddie, did you have any closing comments?
I do. So I can appreciate that we have the ability to go outside of who we are as a city to consult or hire consultants to help address problems. At the same time, we are well above the national average for how long our firefighters stay with our fire department. We're talking about Ben, who's got 18 years of service with the fire department. We've got, I don't know how many years. Todd has a lot. And everyone else on the fire department. We've got Justin. We have all of our surrounding municipalities that we can look at and assess what they're doing and then see if that fits for our unique situation in Rapids. We have an aging population that's higher than our other municipalities. And I don't think that this isn't something that we want to wait on. We're not talking about a parking ordinance. We're not talking about any other written rule that we have as a city. We're talking about the people who literally put their life in harm's way to keep us safe. And I don't think it's appropriate at that point to put this off any longer than further discussing our options, which was the point of the RCA. Obviously, we're not going to do any mapping. I'm not going to do any diagramming of what we could do, but we need to at least talk about our options and then put the ball back in the fire department's court to say, what do we need for this city? can we do a structure like Wausau where we have an EMS and a fire service? Does that work for us? Why or why not? And have that be explained so that we can help identify how many people at minimum we can bring on and budget for as soon as possible. I don't know how long we want to spend on this topic. We're at 5 o'clock, but I do have a breakdown of the potential solutions that we have, including talking about if we do a breakdown of fire and EMS divisions within our structure, what our call volume looks like when we're talking about just the city and not trying to account for the service to all of our other municipalities. I don't want us to be reliant on that money coming in the event that they do go away. So I don't know how long we want to spend.
Well, I'm not too concerned about the time. I mean, we're beyond 5 o'clock, but is there any other comments, though, from the committee, one way or the other, or anybody here? Or? Okay. Well,
If
go
they're,
ahead.
let's put it all out here today and roll with it. Come on up, Bob.
Oh, thank you. All right. I thought I was projecting. Start over? All right. I could. You know that, Sue. To go back to where I was speaking, I got to come back here where I was at. So in order for, this is not a new problem here. For 30 years, the city of Wisconsin Rapids Fire Departments need more staffing. and has continued to push it off and push it off because why? It's expensive. If I asked every one of you, do you want a highly qualified team of paramedics to arrive at your door within 3 minutes of your emergency and you calling 911, you're going to say yes. Now, if I ask you that same question, are you willing to pay for it? The answer may be maybe. It depends on many criteria, right? Well, I will tell you that through these years in the history of the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department, that's where I was at. 1995, we proposed going from an EMT basic service to a paramedic service because we realized the life-saving interventions that we could make in the citizens' lives on an everyday basis with that. 1997, we finished that project, and 19 of us became paramedics, and we are now cross-staffed as firefighter paramedics. 1995, we took on hazardous materials response. Nobody else in the community was going to be able to do it except the fire department. Swift water rescue, high-angle rescue, confined space. Todd had a whole presentation on all the cadre of jobs that are assigned to a Wisconsin Rapids firefighter. That term, firefighter, in the U.S. today has become so much more than fighting fires. It is a universal responder in communities meeting those needs on an everyday basis. You look what's going on in Florida right now. My wife is actually stranded in Florida right now. Well, not stranded, she's with her parents. Couldn't make the flight home because of the hurricane, so she's down there a couple more days. Who do you see on the news executing those swift water rescues, those flooding rescues? It's the firefighters. The firefighters are such a great value for your dollar in the city here, such a great value. You're not going to get it in some hybrided system trying to bring in maybe a private ambulance service or another hybrid system where you get that same level of service. The Wisconsin Rapids firefighters go through extensive training, and yeah, not everybody graduating from the Mid-State program is going to meet the high criteria to be hired by them because they have to pass a physical agility test, a nationally recognized physical agility test. They have to undergo a psych exam. They have to undergo a drug exam. And not many of those, or not all of those candidates coming out of that school are going to meet those criteria. You want the very best to arrive at your door when you call for 911. And so the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department, through all those years, all those additions of services that they provided, hazmat, paramedic, critical care paramedic, interfacility transports being dumped on us or coming more and more because there's no other qualified services in the region to do those. All that stuff just continued to add on to the burden of the department to see where you're at today. The collapse of rural EMS. Wisconsin Rapids didn't want anything to happen in Coosa EMS, but it did. And you see that all over. Rural EMS is holding on by a shoestring, and more, you see the major municipalities in those regions taking on that service. Alder Palmquist brought up looking at Wausau Fire Department. I think that would be an excellent one to compare to what's going on here. During my tenure as chief there, we recognized a major shortfall in staffing there, and we added 12 firefighters to that department to bring us to a current staffing. Then it was 74. They've added another 1.5 positions there this year. And so it's now a department of 75.5, doing about 7,000 calls a year, serving that, not just the city of Wausau region, but the rural region around it. And that's what you see here in Wisconsin Rapids, not just the Wisconsin Rapids city, but the rural region around it. It makes best sense to be collaborative. If you want to discuss alternatives, districting, expansion of further MABUS are all great things. As Alder Palmquist brought up, there's no more justification needed to recognize that the city of Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department needs additional staffing. As a citizen of this city that's heavily invested in this city, I highly encourage you to make that city of Wisconsin Rapids firefighter paramedics nothing short of it. We demand it in the city. I've got one grandson here. I got another on the way. I've got a daughter-in-law that moved from North Carolina here. Why would we sell ourselves short and do anything different? And sitting back and studying it, I've sat on those committees. If you want, the Center for Public Service Excellence that I am a level 1 assessor for will just do that for you. They'll come in and charge you $30,000 to tell you exactly what Chief Eckes just told you. You need more firefighter paramedics. And as Todd brought up, most likely he's going to stand here and going to tell you need 15, not 9. I highly encourage this committee to move forward with hiring as quickly as possible these additional firefighters. Whether that means trying to get 3 on in 2024, possibly looking at the referendum, I think that that's a great way. Todd's list was actually a little bit abbreviated of the number of communities that have gone to referendum. Eau Claire wasn't on there, Grand Chute wasn't on there. I don't know if Beaver Dam was on there. all these departments that all these municipalities in the city, the state of Wisconsin are looking for alternative ways around the levy implications from Act 10 in order to hire these essential services. And so it's not a unique problem here to the city of Wisconsin Rapids. So further study isn't going to reveal anything that isn't already known in these other communities. And so as a citizen of Wisconsin Rapids, as someone that's heavily invested in it, and I happen to be a subject matter expert on it, I highly encourage this committee to move forward quickly, hire additional firefighter paramedics to the city of Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department. Do you have any questions for me? Thank you.
Are we ready? We ready to talk about options? Talk about options. Great. So the first option that was brought up in our July Common Council meeting was creating a basic life services department. I'm going to need your confirmation on some of these, Todd, or any members of our fire department. So this option would mean that we create a basic life services department under our current Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department structure. We mentioned and talked about this at the meeting, and it would increase the number of staff that we would have and decrease the potential cost of hiring those staff. It would also potentially decrease the amount of time that our highly trained staff spend on lower acuity calls. But even though we have a 30 to 40% lower acuity call ratio, DHHS regulations require that we have at least 2 paramedics on our ambulance. So for that reason, is this a sustainable option?
No, and I handed you the DHS 110, comes right out of administrative rule. I gave each one of you that and highlighted the areas in there that tell us because we're 10,000, over 10,000, it's a 2 paramedic system is what we have to have responding to 911 in the city. I made a call to the state, actually I didn't, Division Chief Joling did, to verify that. We wanted to make sure that we were reading that right. We were told right by DHS 110 that that was accurate. I think Mayor Zacher probably made a phone call himself, so.
I did. I appreciate the clarification. So it's 2 paramedics if it's a 911 call, right? So if it goes in through 911, that's what classifies it as an emergency, no matter what the call is for, but you have to respond to it with 2 paramedics, correct?
Response in the city needs to be 2 paramedics, yes.
Right. I just want to clarify, it's when it comes in through 911. If it comes in, if it goes directly to a different,
What else would you call?
if it goes directly from the person calling to the paramedic service, then you can respond with 1?
And bypassing 911, a service that
Like a
has
lift
been worked on
assist,
for
like stuff
probably
that's not
60 years to
emergencies?
try to make a universal number for somebody to get EMS service.
Emergency services, right,
Yeah.
right. So for non-emergency services, is there a way around the 911 system where people know it's not an emergency? We don't have to send the most highly trained people? Is there a way around that service?
I
No.
guess if somebody made a phone call, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But realize that any emergency in the city has to be 2 paramedics, right? So you understand that.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So if you
I'm
take a
just-
phone call and you're going to chest pain in the city, and somebody's coming into the city that's not a 2 paramedic system with lights and siren, that's violating the administrative rule.
Right. I'm just making a point. I don't know if this is the right place or not, but my take on it is always add more people or take away the call volume. And we've already admitted that the call volume is blown out of proportion because we're using it for things that it shouldn't really be used for. But I understand, I've asked this question multiple times, multiple different ways. You know, if we can lower our call volume, then we get back to sustainable call volume so that we can have more of a sustainable level of firefighter paramedics to handle the true emergencies. That's kind of what I was getting at. Thank you.
I think
Well,
I-
I'll ask the committee here, how do you want to handle it at this point? Do you want to hold this over? Do you want to try to make a decision, or where are we going with this tonight? To me, it seems like probably we should have more study on it, but I understand what you're saying. I know how these committees can be too, so. What do you want to do with this as a committee?
As a committee, I think, we've heard good data. We heard, a expert in the department staffing. I don't see why this can't be. I think we all agree too that we want to see the fire department adequately staffed. I haven't heard anybody say that we don't need to add staffing. And being a former member of the fire department, the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department, I've been asked that many times too. Do you feel that the Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department needs more staff? And I think that's kind of if you're asking somebody's opinion on it, I think it's kind of subjective. I think you have to look at the data, and I think what we saw today is that the data shows that there needs to be additional staff. And I think we have, experts that are a part of a committee that put together a great presentation today that shows us the data that backs that up. And I think we have to talk about the options of how do we provide that adequate staffing. And we haven't spent a lot of time on that. We talked about whether the department needs it or not, but I really feel that the data shows that we do. So the question really is, how do we provide the adequate staffing? And the only way I see that is letting, because it comes with a price tag, you have to let the residents decide, what they are willing, what they can afford for adequate staffing.
Well, go ahead, Mayor.
I just want to make a clarification. I'm not quite sure how this goes, but Wisconsin Rapids is between 18 and 19,000 people. Is that correct? All right, so it's saying we need 1.81 firefighters times, just say 19,000. That's 34.39. Like, where's that miss? I've done it like 4 or 5 times. What am I missing? 30,000? I thought we were at 19,000.
30,000 is the total population served, including our municipal contracts.
Oh, including the, okay, so if we did get, all right, so if we did get rid of the outlying areas, we'd be back at 18 to 19,000, then we'd need 34?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you go to these outlying areas who came to us asking for service, and you tell them, we're no longer going to give you service. We're done as of this date. And you guys talk about fire districts and mutual aid. As soon as you tell them that, what do you think they're going to tell me when I say, hey, we'd like to put together a fire district, or we'd like you to be more active in our mutual aid? What do you think their answer to me is going to be?
Well, maybe.
We don't have the greatest
well, you asked me a
reputation as a
question.
city
Hold on. Is this how
to these outlying areas.
So maybe at that time, we could have a conversation with them about the fire, what would be more equitable for all of us? Because right now, it doesn't seem to be equitable.
I think that's something, before we set our standards of that and our goals of that, I think that's something you as the leader of this city should go and start talking with the leaders of those outlying areas. I think you'll get a better perspective of whether that's going to work or not.
I intend to do so, but at this time, I kind of wanted to make sure that I was trying to get everybody in our city on the same page.
I think, I'll be really honest with you, the city of Wisconsin Rapids does not have a very good reputation with the communities that surround us here.
That's not my fault.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that if we go and then tell them that we're no longer going to give you that service anymore, that reputation is going to get even worse.
I think if we go through the numbers and we work with them at this level, I think we can come to an equitable solution better than the one we have right now.
All right, go ahead and try.
Thank you.
Well, I think as chairman, what I'm going to do here is just move on to the next item that we have and just hold this over with no recommendation one way or the other. And obviously, there has to be more communication maybe with the outside communities until we can maybe bring it back to this committee. So if everybody is comfortable with that, and again, I will thank Chief and everybody here that made comments. I think we all listened to you. And before we move on again, is there anybody that wants to make one last comment? If not, yes, let's go ahead. And maybe a couple minutes and then.
A couple points to consider as you're moving forward and studying this between the next meeting. NFPA 1710 isn't just defined by that one number that's in Todd's data set. It's also defined by the number of personnel that's required to be on any piece of fire apparatus and the number of firefighters it takes to safely operate at a fire ground. As Todd referenced earlier, isn't in the presentation, that's 16 firefighters minimum on a fire ground. Each engine and each ladder truck would be required 4 on each of those. So to staff the city's 2 engines and ladder truck would be just 12 just to staff those. That's in the station staffing those, and that's not cross-staffing them to the EMS rigs. So if you look at Wausau, that's what's occurring up there. 3 stations up there. In each of those stations, 2 of the stations have an engine, 1 of the stations have a ladder. Each of those have 4 riding seats on it. On an average, there's 3 to 4 firefighters on those fire suppression pieces of apparatus. And then each of those stations has a separate EMS rig that is staffed by 2 firefighter paramedics. Now, if all those firefighter paramedics that are assigned to the med units are available when a fire tone strikes, then they will also go and work with that engine company or ladder company that's assigned to their station. Plus, you have a battalion chief, administrative chiefs that also come out. Most of the structure fires up there, you're putting minimum 18 to 20 firefighter paramedics on that scene. And so that's a data point to look at. I think NFPA 1710 is a benchmark document that's existed now for 21 years, that it would be an excellent reference point for the city of Wisconsin Rapids to look at. Another one that has not been discussed tonight is ISO rating. Todd, what's our ISO rating right now? 3? So the city of Wisconsin Rapids has an ISO rating of 3. What's that? Insurance Services Office of the U.S. assigns that. That number that you get, number 1 is the best fire departments, emergency service departments in the country. And then it goes down, I think, to 6 or 7. 9? And so we're at a 3, which is a pretty high mark given the circumstances. Wausau's at a 2. There's many communities this size, the size of Wisconsin Rapids, in the state of Wisconsin that are a 1. Clintonville is an example, a volunteer that's at a 1. And how those numbers are derived are many things: dispatch, water supply, location of stations, timeliness of response, staffing is one of the biggest parts of that. So one of the major initiatives with the city of Wausau adding 12 was to try to go from a 2 to a 1. What does that realize as a benefit for the city of Wisconsin Rapids trying to increase the ISO rating? Insurance ratings go drastically down the higher the rated the department, especially for business and industry. And in a time where the city of Wisconsin Rapids is trying to appeal to business and industry to increase staffing to try to drive the improvement number for the ISO rating would be a great benefit, not just for the average homeowner in their residential insurance, but also for the businesses and industries that are here and are looking here. Those are some good benchmark documents. Again, this is nothing new. I think that there's a lot of other communities that have gone through this, answered these same questions that you're asking. Call Beaver Dam. Call Eau Claire. Eau Claire is probably a really good one. City of Wausau, excellent one. Chief Kopp is a great resource up there. I was privileged to lead that department. I live right here in the city. I'd be happy to be a resource for you. I've sat on these study committees that analyze these things, and I'd be happy to look at it. Mayor Zacher, your discussion points about another ambulance service possibly providing, that's going to be relying on a couple of things that you're going to need to look into. One, in order to have some type of dispatching where you're not going to send an ALS rig to a BLS call, you have to have a thing called priority medical dispatching. Wood County is our dispatcher, the Wood County Sheriff's Department. We do not have ownership. We do not have any say in the things that they do. Many years ago, they actually sent a bunch of their dispatchers through priority medical dispatching. It was up and running for a short period of time. They had some turnover in staff. It takes about 40 hours minimum, at the very minimum, to train a dispatcher at that level. And through turnover, that program went to the wayside. It also really prolongs the volume of time that the dispatcher is on the phone with the caller. There are ways that you can speed up response in that dispatch to a communication to the units being sent besides EMR, but the emergency medical dispatch is the best one to do. And so a conversation with the county and where they sit with that project would be the question to that. The question about, can someone call an alternative number? There's not an alternative number to call emergency services. There's businesses in our community that advertise, don't call 911, call us, we're better. That's false. That's false advertising. We never tell the community not to call 911 to try to learn some other number. And if they do end around, which happened a lot, I was a shift commander for the City of Wisconsin Rapids Fire Department for 11 years. So a lot of those middle of the night calls, they really aren't comfortable calling 911. They find the station 1 number, and it was, an emergency.
Excuse me, sir, could you kind of maybe shorten your?
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to close.
Discussion a little bit, maybe?
I'm really good on that. So I'd be happy to be an offer a resource to this community as you look at this decision. I just ask you to look at it a holistic view, look at communities that are working and functioning at a high level, City of Wausau, Eau Claire, Fond du Lac, others like that are close to your community. So thank you for allowing me the public comment, and I'm a resource to you as you move forward.
Okay, but I think there was one more gentleman that wanted to speak, and if you can just kind of keep it within 2-3 minutes, appreciate it. Thank you.
But I won't be able to talk with the grace of Bob Bartek, Chief Bartek, and Chief Eckes, but I'll give you my viewpoint here. My name is Mike Lasitza. I'm a battalion chief and shift commander for Crew 1. My goal during these few minutes is to simplify this ask and make evident the need on a daily basis. This is not scripted, and I need to preference that these are my thoughts and feelings. I had the opportunity to begin the ride-along period that the mayor participated in. He spent about a day and a half with me and had many questions. This was a week that I would care to forget, as we had the fatal fire on 11th and Apple on Tuesday of that week. During the week, it hit me hard how far we are behind in terms of staffing. With the mayor on site, I really focused on the numbers and realized how thin we run our operation. If anyone knows me, they understand that I work through things always and understand that someone else has it worse. We can deal with this. Even for me, it is getting harder to ignore the dynamics of being short-staffed and the effects on the community and the crews. With emergency services, we are cyclic. We have a week where we have a record number of runs and back to average the following week. What I have seen is we need to be ready within reason for those high points. I have studied and seen the long-term statistics for our department and nationally. We have no relief from 911 calls, and this is something completely out of our control. I need you to realize that we have taken many measures internally to combat our staffing crisis. We have lowered the staff on ambulance calls from 3 to 2. We rely on first responders in contracted areas for assistance. We have brought our MABUS partners on initial alarms into the city to bolster our fire staffing. With the contracted ambulance areas, the chief has worked hard and built relationships and found a per cap that makes sense for both the city and outlying communities. These areas and contracts make sense. It was the right thing to do at the time, and it still is. The staffing ask, 3 additional personnel, 1 additional member per crew, and a daily staffing minimum of 10 solves a number of issues for us. This gives us a staffing model of 6 at Station 1 and 4 at Station 2. With this model, we gain a 4th ALS ambulance at Station 2. So we would have 2 at Station 1 and 2 at Station 2. Having an odd number of personnel, 9 currently is our minimum staffing, this leads us to be combat ineffective. We need pairs for most of our tasks, and a 10-man minimum would place us there. I see this as an essential step and would expect this to be filled through the budget process. Moving to an additional 6 personnel, this would obviously support the above. It would also take a large chunk of our overtime budget and give it back to the city. It would also drive down the overlapping calls to a manageable frequency. Adding 9 personnel sets us up for the long term. I see the first 3 personnel as essential with action needed now through the budget process. I could see the additional of 3 or 6 as a referendum. There are ways to accomplish the higher end of this through a department strategic plan and triggers, so you don't feel like we are always coming to you with a doomsday scenario. The men and women of the WRFD are the ultimate professionals. I am proud to stand alongside them. I look at my job daily as to place my personnel in positions to succeed. This is getting harder and harder to do, and now I ask for your help. I need you to trust the department heads and the managers in the city. I'll leave you with this. Since January 1st of this year, we are averaging 3 times every day when we have 5 or less personnel available to respond to the next emergency. This is not a greedy ask, but I feel an essential one. Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you for everybody for your presentations, and,
Can I make one more point about BLS calls? This
well,
crew
if you
that's
can make
on-
it quick.
This crew that's on today was on their last shift 4 days ago. They went to a person who passed out, and it came across as they were conscious now and just needed help getting them picked up. By the time they were done with that call, they had that person intubated, they had done CPR on them, had to give them epi to bring them back, and that person went to Aspirus and got flown north. To my knowledge, that person's still alive. I had not seen an obituary anyplace, but this is the importance of having ALS all the time. We get those kinds of calls very often, not every day, sometimes not every week, but when we get that critical patient, sometimes comes in as it's nothing more than a lift assist, and we end up doing measures like that. Think about that too. Those residents deserve that attention also, so that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I don't think anybody criticizes the knowledge and the good work that everybody does. That certainly has, nobody has ever spoken against that, so. Okay, with that then, thank you again, and we'll go to item number 2 then. Okay, Sue, that's it's a request for temporary contract for the city attorney, and Sue, if,
Yes.
turn it over to you for a second.
Okay. So as you may be aware, the former assistant city attorney, who did the majority of the city prosecutions, left to become judge a year ago. And for this past year, I've been handling all of the city prosecutions. At this point, in talking with city staff and the mayor, and actually Alderperson Catanaugh, regarding maybe a possible referral that might be made regarding either the appointment or the election of my position. Currently, it's elected. I guess I'm looking for at least some temporary relief to assist in the city prosecutions until I'm looking at maybe 90 days to kind of come back with a succession plan of the staffing of the city attorney office, and how the prosecutions will be done, as well as just the general city attorney position. So what I'm looking for is, there are a number of attorneys in town that practice municipal law, do prosecutions for other municipalities. I guess I'm looking at permission to retain them on a case-by-case basis, mostly for trial work, maybe some circuit court work, to just assist to take some of the load off me while I'm doing the other city attorney stuff, and then also kind of planning a more permanent strategic city attorney office.
Well, basically, what are you looking for right now? What, a particular time limit, or?
Well, right now, the attorney, I was hoping to get some quotes for hourly rates. Unfortunately, 2 of the attorneys that I had contacted are on vacation. I'm anticipating that depending on the break that they would give the city, that it might be anywhere from $100 an hour to $200 an hour, maybe a little more, to assist. That's kind of what attorneys charge if it's a reduced rate for a municipality. And I guess I can't imagine that it's going to be more than 8 to 10 hours a month. I can handle the pretrials. I mean, it's kind of tedious and it's time, but I'm not going to pay someone that amount of money to just to do the pretrials, I can do that. It's more the trial work that's more, preparation and, a lot of them some of them might go to circuit court, and those are mostly OWIs. And a lot of those end up settling at the last minute, but you still have to be prepared to go to trial. So those are the types of things that I'm thinking of. I guess if you want to set a limit, or I'm hoping by the time of the council meeting, I might have some more firm numbers in terms of hourly rate, and then might say, setting a maximum of hours per month, or, right now, the budget contains $2,000 a month basically for assistant city attorney or city prosecutor services.
But whoever you would choose, you want that person to actually be a full-time, part-time?
No, it would just be hourly to help out with some of the city prosecutions. It would not be to do anything more than that, and it would just be on a kind of a case-by-case basis. I just wanted the ability to do that if needed to assist me in just the time it takes to handle all the prosecutions. And then hopefully within 30 or 90 days, then we can talk about the future of the position and the staffing levels and so on. So this is just to kind of get me through the next 90 days or so, 3 months or so. Because right now, as I said, I'm doing all of that what the city prosecutor was doing and have been doing for the last year.
Okay, well, committee, you've heard the request. What are your wishes?
I have a question.
Yes, Maddie, go ahead.
Attorney Schill, you mentioned a lot of words there, that you were considering using multiple attorneys, or were
Well,
you
right,
considering
because sometimes
contracting?
people have conflicts, that they may have represented the person before. There's a local law firm that probably 2 of the 3 attorneys do a lot of municipal work that could be using one or both of those. And then there's a third attorney who does a lot of municipal work who also said he would be interested. So I can't say for sure that it's just going to be one person consistently. But it might be a couple different ones, either from the same law firm or different, depending on, as I said, it's common to do this as like if I would have a conflict with something, then I might find another municipal attorney to step in. And a lot of times that just does as a courtesy, because it's not very often, and we might sub for each other, but this would kind of be more, I think I should pay them to assist, because it's going to probably be sporadic, but consistent, that I can rely on that person or persons.
And do you see the changing, this is just for the 30 or 60 or 90 days, and then once you have that succession planning, then this could change?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. I wouldn't want to continue that way. It would either be doing like I did before, where I appoint a city attorney just as a part-time an employee to handle prosecutions, or the more likely, if I'm limiting it to just city prosecutions, it would be an independent contractor. It would just be paying an attorney, because I don't think it would be appropriate to have an employee when I don't really supervise that employee. I'm not really involved in what that employee does, and that's kind of how the assistant city attorney was before. He was an employee, but I think it would be better to contract completely for those services. I guess that's the second option, and the third option might be if I would consider increasing the level of services, that it might be a part-time employee that not only did prosecutions but maybe helped in other areas, and/or the fourth option would be to have another full-time city attorney. But before any of that, I will get you all the numbers on what other cities do and budgets and so on. And then the other thing that I mentioned was, I know there's been talk of perhaps making the position an appointed position rather than elected position. So that talk might, kind of lend itself to kind of the future of the department, which I have always been in favor of an appointed position. I think you should have the best person that you can find, and not just the person who got the most votes. And this is coming from the person who got the most votes. But So, yeah, and I think that's a good analysis or a good exercise to undertake, is just to look at that. Also, of whether you want to do that, because in succession planning, obviously, then you're limiting who might be that person, and then it would be good to be able to, because I anticipate, I'm not being here for a great number of years yet, that have somebody maybe that's the assistant that then could maybe, be the full-time, be the regular city attorney, and kind of succeed me, so, and kind of be trained. So that's all kind of what's all going on in my head regarding that right now.
Tim, there is money in the budget for that. It wasn't there for that part-time position?
Yeah, just shy of $27,000 was budgeted for the assistant city
Right,
attorney.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, go ahead, Dean.
This sounds more like you're looking at retaining outside counsel, right? I mean, in effect, rather than an employee?
Right, it definitely would not be an employee. It would be a independent contractor for attorney services. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like we're outsourcing the service. We're not hiring an employee. I mean, in effect, is what you're asking.
Right. We're out, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's none of the work that I usually would do. It's the work that the city prosecutor had done, and it's not even all of the work. I can continue to do some of it to try to save money for the city, but some of it, it's just kind of a lot to do in addition to my other duties, so.
Okay, thanks.
Well, again, committee, where do you want to go with this?
I'd make a motion, but would like to clarify, I heard 27,000 and there's 2,000 a month in the budget currently to cover this type of service.
Yeah, I had just kind of guesstimated. I thought that the assistant city attorney was making about 24,000 per year, but it must be a little more than that.
Yeah, well, since it was a position, there's some roll-ups on that. That's what
Oh,
accounts
okay,
for the
I
difference
see.
between the two.
Right, the actual budgeted amount, right.
Without an actual amount, I wouldn't include that in the motion, so I would make a motion to approve the request to temporarily contract service for the city prosecutor's office.
Well, I'll second that motion. So any discussion on the motion then to,
Do we need to discuss a dollar amount per
Pardon?
month? Do we need to add anything to that motion as far as a dollar amount per month, or?
I think you said 2,000, didn't you?
No, there's a rough estimate of 2,000 a month and up to 27 that's in the budget and available. I wouldn't want to restrict the services that we provide or the services that we could contract out, because what that is doing essentially is offsetting Sue's work so that she can do other contingency plans for that department.
Right, I don't anticipate having to pay someone $2,000 a month. Actually, I was just pointing out that that was the amount that was budgeted and was paid to the prior. But I could, if you want to do a not to exceed, consistent with what the budget actually is per month, I can certainly live with that. Or, maybe so many hours per month, but as I said, I'm kind of waiting for those numbers and did not get them. So I guess what I would recommend is maybe not to exceed $2,000 per month, and obviously if there's an issue with that, I'll need to come back and talk with you all about it.
Can I make a
No, go
friendly,
ahead.
can I make a friendly amendment to the amendment, and maybe not necessary per month, but in the annual budgeted, so that we don't run into problems where we have maybe a busy month and not, so what's annually budgeted for that prosecution office?
I don't know, I don't see any problem with that, but you made the motion. so-
Yeah, I like that idea. Thus, the motion is now to approve the request to temporarily contract assistance for the city prosecutor services not to exceed the total budget allocation.
Okay, I don't know if we have to vote on it, but those in favor of the motion, the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
And aye, so, okay, that passes, so. Okay, any more discussion on the motion? If not, we'll vote on the amended motion then. All those in favor say aye.
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 I'll say aye. So, okay, that should just about handle it. Any other questions, Sue?
No,
from
thank you
us?
very much.
Pardon?
I said thank you.
You're welcome. So, I think that this probably brings us to the end of our meeting, and I'll,
Make a motion to adjourn?
if you're making the motion adjourn, okay.
I'll second.
Second. It. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. We're adjourned.